So today, our speaker believes that great leaders don't just wait for opportunities to come to them, but he believes that they are hidden in plain sight. So opportunities are like Easter eggs, and at times they aren't loud, but they are tucked away, waiting for someone to look and find them. And so today our speaker will be showing us how great leaders find what others miss. And so just to share a bit of background on our speaker, his name is Kagiso, Khaole, and he joined Lisaka on the 1st of September 2025 as the CEO of the Merchants Division. And so to give you a bit of background about Lisaka, Lisaka is a South African fintech company whose sole purpose is to give financial service to underserved consumers and businesses within the South African market. He has over a decade of experience driving growth and innovation at leading global tech companies such as SpaceX, Uber, and Samsung. And he's also a certified director and holds an MBA from Wits University. So, if you've ever walked past your next big break without noticing it, pay attention. Because he's carrying a basket full of insight, and he will show you how to develop a sharp eye to spot opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming Kagiso.
Hi everybody, how you doing? Yo, no energy. Did I come? Was lunch not good? Lunch was probably good, right? How's it been today? This is my first YLS, so I wish I was on this side, not this side, How are the speakers? Like some really cool people. I'm really jealous of you guys. At the point of your careers, meeting some of these individuals, having up close access to them is really cool. But yeah, I really hate those bios. It makes me feel like I'm more important than what I am. But it's really cool. It's my privilege to chat to each of you guys, and I hope I can leave you with a few nuggets that you can take forward. So I'm sure I was also selecting for my group by using the title that I used. So I think I have a lot of crazy people here that could have gone to more structured discussions, but you decided to come to the Easter eggs talk. Hey, I don't know what that says about you or me, right? So the question that I really want to put forward to each of you today, again, meeting some of these people, hearing their stories, you sometimes ask yourself, it's what is so special about these individuals, You hear some of the stories, it's really amazing. It's like, how lucky do you have to be in this position, or what secret sauce, or I don't know what snake did you have to, what is I'm trying to, yeah. So from the outside, we call it luck. A lot of people sometimes ask me about, hey man, you've done some really cool stuff in your career. And honestly, I always say it's luck. And sometimes when I say it's luck, I just see shoulders drop and saying, this guy doesn't want to tell us the secret. But I hope maybe once I'm done, you understand a little bit more about what I mean when I say it's luck. So today's talk, as I was preparing it, I wrote it as a bit of a letter to all of you that took time to come and be in this particular talk. So I'll see how long I can keep it up as a letter, because I might just break out and have a conversation as well. So how about you start by just exercising your vocal cords? So I'm going to say dear, and then all of you must shout your own names, right? Out loud. All right, this could be embarrassing, right, for some of you. I'm saying don't use your full government names. Just use the one that they know you as, all right? Okay, so dear? All right. Why do some people find opportunity more often than others? Why do some people keep ending up in the right rooms, meeting the right people, finding the right openings? From outside, we call that luck. But I think it's only partly true, because I don't think luck is always random. I think very often what we call luck is opportunity encountered by people who know how to search, how to spot, and how to seize. Hold on to those words. We're going to come back to those later. So this talk is called Easter Eggs: Leadership, Luck, and Opportunity. What the hell are Easter eggs? All right, so I grew up with video games. Okay, I need to actually gauge the room. So I'm not going to, I don't know how to do this in a way. Okay, how many of you are in your 20s? Let's keep it general. How many are in your 20s? Okay, how many are in your 30s? All right, how many are in your 40s? Okay, all right. Okay. So there's a different generations of video games here. So I grew up in the Nintendo. We had to pay money to play games, and you spent your money, and sometimes you had to figure out things by yourself. And what developers used to do is that they used to put these little secrets inside the games that some people would find out by luck. Some people will learn from somebody else about where to find it. But we all used to sit there every day, trying to figure out how to get to finding these Easter eggs. The first one was built out, I think we've got it there. It's in 1979. So it's one of the first consoles. The one with the little dots and the ball is bouncing up? It's called an Atari. And there was this game called Adventure. And this developer was upset because they didn't want to give them credits for developing the game. So the developer didn't want to show their name as part of the people who built it. So guess what he did? He went and built a room in the game that you had to find by secret. And in that room, it did nothing. All it said was made and by his name. So what happened is that he didn't tell anybody. This was shipped, millions and millions of these games were shipped all over the world with this secret. And then at some point in time, somebody found it. So imagine that. Millions and millions of homes had this little secret in it that no one knew. All right? And somebody discovered that. And it actually made them quite a celebrity in those worlds. But that's what an Easter egg is. And after that, developers started, doing a lot of these things, where you find little tricks and little secrets within the games. From a video game perspective, I promise this is the last of the video game ones, but there's this code that I grew up with. It was up, up, down, down, left, right, BA. Guys, that was the secret source of everything, right? If you want to know a red flag, if you're about to date someone, if they use that code, that's a cheater right there, right? So it would unlock 40 lives in games. It would do just amazing things, right? But actually last week, there was a real cool Easter egg that popped up on Google Earth. So Google Earth has been around since 2007. Inside of Google Earth was a flight simulator. A full flight simulator. You can go fly over wherever you want, if you always wanted to go see some terrain. This was actually sitting inside Google Earth. And last week, Google said, hey, we're opening it up. So only a few people actually knew how to get to it, right? So that secret has been hidden for what now? 20 years? No, what's it? Yeah, 19 years, all right? There's one, another one, like I said, you guys came to the wrong talk. So here's my first and only fart joke of the talk, right? Tesla has a feature that's called emissions testing mode. And what happens is that it's got a whoopee cushion under the seat. So as soon as your passenger sits down, it lets out a certain noise. So you can imagine, go onto TikTok, you can see just some of the novel sort of expressions that everyone had on there. And again, if you use Android, if you use a Samsung, I can give you a free one. I work there. Most of the Samsung apps, if you go to the settings and just keep tapping, I think it's about 10 times, you unlock developer mode, and you can just do lots of crazy stuff on most of your apps. So those are Easter eggs. So just hold on to that idea. Now, the thing to realize about, I think, all three of these is that somebody hid them for you. But in reality, the Easter eggs that you find in life, those sometimes are not hiding for you to easily find them, but they're there. The crux of my letter and this thing I want to share with you is that value can exist long before it's visible. If you look at the flight simulator, 19 years, right? It was finished, it was working, it was extraordinary. It's an amazing piece of design, but it was invisible to everybody. Some of you guys have used Google Earth and you did not find that, right? This is true in life, this is true in games, this is true in a lot of areas, that the most important opportunities, they don't arrive labeled. They don't have signs pointing to Easter egg over here, right? Those are things that you have to go and find. A lot of times, they also arrive disguised. Now, just to make this metaphor also just a little bit harder, I think a little bit more honest. The opportunities that you find in your life, those, nobody's going to hide those. Nobody owes you that hidden reward. Nobody designed business, life, the system, so that you can go and find them, you in particular. Right? Imperfect systems exist around us. You often have to notice value where people see nothing. So sometimes, just like that initial video game, people just saw a wall, right? And somebody thought, what if I just walk into that wall? And they discovered something really different. And sometimes you have to create value where none was placed for you. Because this is the crux of this talk. It's not a talk about business. It's not a talk about life. There's a lesson about leadership, personal leadership. It's about recognizing possibility where others see none. So one of the big ideas that I've crystallized for myself over time is about expanding my surface area for luck. So these two lovely diagrams that I took so much time to draw out for you represent two ideas. The first one is standing still. When I'm not in motion, I have the full expectation that I'm not going to receive anything. I'm not going to find anything. I'm not going to discover anything. But one thing I know is that once I'm in motion, once my business is in motion, once I take motion in my career, family, etc., that's where my chances, my opportunities of making connections, making discoveries, finding those Easter eggs becomes a lot bigger. Your surface area for luck, I think in the most simplest terms, is your exposure to possibility. I think I'm talking to probably the converted. It's a Saturday. People are having fun out right now. And you guys are here. But the question is about being present is just the first step. The second step is you've entered this room, but how many emails, how many numbers have you collected today? I have a WhatsApp group of people that I started our careers. I can tell you all their salaries because we all came in the same package, right? And one is a senior advocate. One is a leader within the financial services. Others a DJ, right? But they're all in different places, right? But what was important was that first orientation that we came together, we decided to connect. And we're still, it's debatable, we're still friends, right? We argue with each other more than we hug and kiss each other, right? But that initial decision in that room, in that training room, 20 years ago now, has been so important because what we've done for each other, with each other, has been transformational in our lives. So as you go through your week, your day, keep this idea about what is my exposure currently to possibility, to opportunity. The second idea comes from a book by a gentleman by the name of Stephen Johnson, which is about the adjacent possible. Remember that beautiful diagram I showed, right? So you're in a room, But the reality, this room that we sit in right now only has 3 doors. I think that one just gets electrocuted, right? But it only has this many doors. But when you're sitting in the room, and you look at it from that perspective, you say, I'm limited by the number of doors that are here. But as soon as you go out that door, you realize that there are many other doors, right? So this idea called the adjacent possible also explains why, for example, why is it that in this weird part of the US, in Silicon Valley, are all these tech companies created? Why is it that technology comes from Joburg and not necessarily Zanin, right? Because cities force a lot of those connections, right? So your surface area for possibility expands because of the number of interactions and connections that you make. So this idea of the adjacent possible is talking to when you widen, your world, you're not just hoping for luck. You're expanding your surface area to catch that luck. Just think about it like expanding a parachute in the rain. You're going to catch more water when it's a lot bigger, right? Sounds simple. So we then come to, from those 2 ideas, we come to one core idea, which is around that luck visits people in motion. It's not always, I'll be honest, it's not fair. It's not guaranteed. It's not perfect. But often, luck, opportunity, possibility comes to those people that are in motion. A quick show of hands, maybe in the room, of people who are living in a chapter that you did not think was going to happen at this point in time. I can share something. Okay, there we go. Like I thought by 25 I'll have 2 kids and a dog and a picket fence, right? That did not happen, right? So look around the room. You saw how many hands went up, right? So when you reflect on the fact that everybody around you is living today in a life that hasn't gone to plan, good or bad, right? People around you are living in a state that has happened to them, has happened because of them, has happened because of other circumstances. It makes you reflect then, what is that strategy that you actually need to deploy to be able to be in a state where, again, your surface area for possibility is expanded. Sometimes all these things happen to you through disruption, through surprise, failure. If you're lucky enough, it comes from good planning. And for the people that had the privilege, should I say privilege, or forced to do management at some point in time, we'll come across an idea by a gentleman of Clayton Christensen. I actually did have the privilege to learn from him while he was still alive. And one of his ideas is around deliberate and emergent strategy. So you may have learned it from business, and he went on and wrote a book about how we apply it in our personal lives. There's a deliberate strategy. That's what we write on the 1st of January. This year I will ... And then there's the emergent one, right? That's when Mike Tyson says, your plan changes as soon as you get punched in the face, right? Same thing in business. As we continue and start to move in motion, the terrain changes. On a map, what does a map look like? A map is smooth. It's flat on your table. When you walk that terrain, it has uphills, it has curves, and that's where the strategy changes. But what I'm not saying to you today is that you need one or the other. You actually need both. Because without a plan, you're going to drift. But without this acceptance of emergence, of being in motion, about expanding your connections, about expanding your surface area for luck, you will go blind. So Easter eggs aren't found by staring harder at a map. So you've taken a lot of notes today. You've gotten a lot of tips. And you can sit in a room all weekend, all week, going through all those things. And I can guarantee probably nothing's going to change. All right? What changes is when you take some of that and you put it into motion. Okay? So So a personal story from my side was one of them. I put myself out on a limb quite a lot, but quite recently, some years ago, I always tried to avoid morning talk radio, but for some reason I said yes. And I was on Cape Talk. And for those that listen to morning radio, those people prepare to roast you before even your segment has come. You know, they start building it up from 5:30. That time you're talking at 7:20. And essentially, I'll use his name, John Perlman, right? So he is the morning guy. So John Perlman was saying that, hey, we're going to talk to this guy. He's from Uber, and he's saying that electric cars are coming to South Africa, right? And the whole of Africa. And by the time he said hello, the stage was already set, all right? Kagiso, this is a cool idea, but that is for the West, it's not for Africa. Kagiso, it's like, what are you smoking? We've got bigger problems. It's load shedding. And that time it was stage 4, guys. Right. But the truth about it is that from that interview, I had now said it out loud outside of the walls of our offices to the public that I was forced to continue on that journey. It was already in motion. That idea was in motion. A few weeks later, there was a green conference, and the green conference was more worried about solar panels at game and macro than it was about cars. And I stood there and spoke about the Uber plan for 2040 to make sure all cars are electric, and I said Africa will not be left behind. From there, I got down, somebody came to say hi and said, I want you to meet someone. And from that person, he said, I want you to meet another person later that day. In the evening, I was having a braai at this gentleman's house, Mohammed Jua. And Emma and I, we built a friendship, and I understood that this guy has been dreaming about bringing electric motorbikes into the country. I said, my man, just as crazy as I am, let's get to work. The following month, I was in Nairobi. Happened to be having coffee in the same building where our offices were. And a guy by the name of Ali Abbas bumped into him in the elevator, and he says, what are you guys up to? And randomly started speaking about electrifying mobility. And he says, man, I've been trying to do this for so long. And this guy was just selling flour at the time. Fast forward a few months later, in September, we launched the first ever electric mobility fleet in Africa. Not in one country, but 2 countries. Today, probably most of your Uber Eats is delivered on an electric bike, those blue bikes and those white bikes. You go to Kenya, you will not go anywhere without seeing the yellow jackets and the blue helmets. A few months ago, the first electric cars made public at an affordable price as the cheapest product actually available. But all of that started with a declaration, it moved into motion, and from motion, things started coming together. I'm not standing here to tell you that was the master plan. No, it was not. I had no cooking clue about who I needed to connect with, what I needed to do. What I knew is that from that idea, I needed to get into motion. I needed to take what I knew on paper this thing could do, what I knew and my team knew that was possible. We needed to start moving it forward into the next phase of action. So that takes us to the crux of what I briefed in the beginning. There's really 3 things that are really important about this. Searching, having a spirit of curiosity, having that initiative, having that first push to move you forward. All right? Secondly, being able to spot the patterns, spot the opportunity. It's really about humility. It's about being able to be vulnerable, being able to understand that you're not necessarily in control of what the next steps are. What you know that is actually important is that You are the one that's going to start this thing and put it into motion. A really interesting story is about a company that's right now it's called Slack, but at the time they were creating a video game. You can see the thread is at least moving, right? Yes. So they were creating a video game, and they failed dismally at creating this video game. And when that game died, there was a little tool that they used because they were trying to communicate with each other a lot better. And they went and, they look at the rubble of what is left, and they saw this little piece of software, and they said, this may have some legs. Let's just see. Let's try it out. Everyone loves it. And from there, they built out this billion-dollar company, right? So again, that little side tool, that little thing that was there, requires somebody to go and spot the real opportunity and that value of what it is. And from there, the team and the owner, he always talks about how he didn't necessarily see the value of what is in front of him. And what it took actually was the people around him, his staff, his people, to be able to bring it all together and show him what the value of it. So it's about spotting things. It's about that being able to see when you walk through a new door, when you walk into a new room, what possibility actually exists in there. The last bit is about seizing, all right? And seizing for me, I think, is really important. It's about courage. Each and every one of you need to be brave. Sometimes you're the youngest person in the room. Sometimes you're the oldest person in the room. Sometimes you're the only one that went to a public school, right, in the room. But you do need to have the courage to jump and seize the little clue, the little opportunity, the little Easter egg, little glimpse of that little Easter egg that's sitting in the room that you're in. You need to have the courage to take that next step. Like I said, all those beautiful notes that you guys are taking, they will die as notes until you're able to look at it and say, I'm going to take that next step. And that's why courage matters. It is not a performance of courage. It's actually, I always say, I'm always brave afterwards. I remember the first time I was asked to bungee jump. I don't know why anyone would want to do that, but I said, I'm not doing it. And then I got onto solid ground, and I said, that was the stupidest thing ever. And that's when I got scared, right? And a lot of times in business and life, it's also about that. It's about having that courage to actually take that step. I don't know if you've seen kids. Kids will see their dads and they think like, you're going to catch me. They jump off stairs, jump off tables. We need to be like that. If you're going to go and expand your surface area of luck, you need to go and put yourself out there. And again, you don't need total clarity. Like I said, the people that went and found those Easter eggs, they didn't know what they were looking for, right? But they explored rooms. They went and bumped into walls. They went and tried different things, right? They were searching. They were looking for clues. And what happens is that once you start finding your first Easter eggs, you find your second one, you start developing an intuition, a natural gut feeling to say that, something isn't right. And a lot of the people that you've met and are going to meet today, right, they also had that feeling. Some of them are entrepreneurs. They sat and said, this doesn't make any sense. I love the story of, Scoopoo? This new little startup. I don't care if they succeed or fail, I just love it, right? Like you've got ShopRite, this amazing company. I love that company. That is doing so well and just destroying all their competition. But here's this guy who says, I can give you flour cheaper than this big, massive company. And all of us sit there and you look at it, you're like, but this was obvious, right? This we could have all done this, right? But that was the only person that was vulnerable enough, had the humility enough, had the courage to actually go out and go try and do this thing, right? So, like I said, with that example about my own personal life, it's about sometimes saying it publicly because, hey man, as soon as your mouth writes a check into the universe, you're forced to go into action. Sometimes you need to declare it, right? And sometimes you need to actually just stick your hand out, make that introduction, talk to that person because you don't know what the next step, the next room is going to look like. And that next room could be the room that unlocks the full possibility of what can exist. So the curiosity to search, the humility to spot, the courage to to seize the opportunity. So to all you young leaders, you are born in an interesting space. You're born in South Africa, you're born in the continent of Africa. You, like I said, you can find yourself in a room and you can go and look at it and say, Africa, there's not enough doors. In the US, there's just sliding doors of opportunity. All right? Where we are in South Africa, you say, maybe it's like this room. There's only 2 doors. I need to either go to FMB or, no, just joking. I've only got these options. But the reality is that you need to get into motion. You need to really start moving across and starting to think in that way of trying to spot opportunities. The systems are unequal. We all started in different stages. Even people that you think have got it, a lot better, have their own challenges and have to overcome certain things. I'm not ignoring those constraints. Those things are real. But I'm not willing to stand here and say that you must surrender to that. The reality is that you've seen people, you've heard their stories, and they're no different to you, right? The person next to you, there's nothing different about them. The idea that comes to mind, particularly in how we lead ourselves and how we lead our businesses, is an acceptance that we don't control the system, right? But we control how wide awake we are within that system. We control how curious we are in that system. We control how many signals we choose to listen to. Signals are everywhere, every single day. And we also control how much value we want to build and contribute. So how bravely you move really determines all the clues that you'll find. So in closing, I want to ask each of you to reflect on a couple of things. Think about the rooms, the metaphorical rooms that you haven't entered. Think about that person that you've been dying to learn from, that you haven't bothered to step out and learn from. Think about that problem that you think is worth understanding and unpacking. A lot of times entrepreneurs will tell you that the problem they went out to solve was the one that annoyed them the most. A lot of times the people that go out and build things are the ones that tell you that, man, this thing is wrong. This is not the way it's supposed to work. Think about that. Think about some of the signals that perhaps you've been ignoring. Think about that idea that maybe just requires an experiment. And that could be within business. That could be within your life. That could be within the relationships and the people around you. Be curious enough to knock on those doors, sometimes run into walls. Be curious enough to keep exploring. And be curious enough to make sure that you go out and seize the opportunities and the Easter eggs that are hiding in plain sight. Just like these slides, life is hand-drawn, life is sketched. It is not perfect squares, it's not going to be perfect 360-degree circles. But I do encourage all of you to take what you've noted, what you've seen, and put it into action. Because luck happens to people that are in motion. Thanks a lot for your time.
Good afternoon, Kagiso, and thanks for your presentation. My name is Gerald Marmuthu. I'm a senior investigator within the South African Reserve Bank. You emphasized that Easter eggs are found in the terrain rather than on the map. I think my question is, as leaders become more senior and further removed from day-to-day operations, how can they intentionally stay connected to the terrain without getting lost in the details?
Hi, Gerald, you should be up here talking because a senior investigator at the SARB. So your job is always about, you can stare at the pages, but it's only once you get into looking and doing that, forensic work, do you actually get to the crux of everything. So how do you get, maybe to rephrase it, how do you avoid getting stuck in the rut, essentially? And that, I think it starts first off with just making a deliberate decision about your time, your energy, about what you want to actually get done. It's amazing. Only, we were chatting earlier, and one of my colleagues that's volunteering here today is actually a vegan. And I said, I always find people who've got dietary, who fill that section that's called dietary requirements to be more, they look healthier, right? And the only reason is because they have this pause before making a decision. Some of us, we just receive it. It just goes down, right? And that's the same with how you need to approach even your day. Your choice up front about what is it that I want to pursue ends up helping you, and what I'm going to prioritize, secondly, ends up helping you select your day, to select how you're going to distribute your energy. There's that analogy of, the nuggets, the pebbles, and the dust. And, for those that don't know, the analogy is like if you have a tray with, big rocks, small pebbles, and sand, and you need to fill the jar. You're not you don't start with the sand and then add the rocks. You won't have space, for the big rocks. You start with the rocks, and the pebbles will find their way between the rocks, and then the sand will fill in those gaps even more. And I think it's really, that's the same thing. I've pursued a career, rightly or wrongly, sometimes I wonder, maybe I would have been retired by now if I took a more standard path. But what I've always decided is that I always seek a life of adventure. I think maybe in Lusaka I've asked for too much adventure, but it's always that mindset that helps break down, I think, all the other decisions. And for me, practically, that's how you select. You need to always have your things first, and then let everything else come in. Because the reality is, once you're on the terrain, I think you're going to get moved across. But it's important to have those rocks that are in place. Yeah.
I think your closing remark stood out for me. Be curious enough to keep exploring. Siyabonga Mshibe, the Executive Chairman of South African Youth and Property Association. I tend to represent and interact a lot with youth. And what I'm trying to get into right now, how can we get young people into motion? I think this year we're celebrating 50 years post the Soweto uprising, right? A lot of young people feel disempowered. Go to engagements, they're not there. You name it all. Unemployment speaks for itself. I think what you just said is very right, because I'm a testament to that. When you motion, things happen to you, people get to see you. But how can we, as a society, I think it's a collective responsibility, get all young people in motion so that at least maybe we can move the needle forward. Thank you.
Just first off, I think you guys do incredible work. I just want to encourage you again, just a big one. It's really look up to people like yourself who have a big heart for young people. We're in a crisis. We are in a big crisis. But sometimes, going through townships, and one of the scariest things is it feels like a public holiday on a Tuesday. It's like there's so many people, and that's where the statistics, they don't make sense in Bryanston. The statistics make sense once you're out there. So for me, and I don't have a full answer, but there's a couple of things that come to mind. The first one was, I remember meeting this 5-year-old, and this kid, they asked him what does he want to be, and he said he said a forensic investigator, but he was talking CSI, funny enough, And for me, I was like, I learned what a forensic investigator is from Law and Order. I did not know this thing until I was a grown man, right? But the difference there is the exposure and the journeys. The way I lived my life, I remember my father, he came in, I still don't know where he got those things, but he came with this set of encyclopedias, right? For those who are in their 20s, encyclopedias was the internet, and he brought the internet home. Boom. I remember I used to sit and just page through this thing, and I learned about, I was like, poisonous frogs from the Amazon. Guys, where I stay, there's no frogs, right? But what I believe is important, and what each of us can do to help solve this crisis that we have, is to give people exposure. right? Remember, we spoke about the clues. There's people who are referees at Sunday soccer matches in the dust that don't know that to become a referee, you need to read a PDF. Do you understand? There's people that are queuing for 340 Rand grants that don't understand that you can fill in a form, get a motorbike, and make 8,000 Rands a week. So sometimes, I think your question is coming from the other side. It's like, what can we do? I think it's like the movie 300, where the guy just goes, oh. We need to come in and just kick people towards opportunity, exposing them. The heart that, make embarrass Lincoln a bit, but the heart that he has for all of you is what makes him set up things like this. Be vulnerable to his friends and colleagues and say, hey man, can you please just take your Saturday out and do this little favor for me, right? But that approach is to expose people, because until you start, exposing young people to the possibilities, right? A lot of people are feeling stuck. That analogy, like that I said, they're sitting in rooms every day. They get out from their home to the same corner. They're sitting, and for them, they just look at it and there's no opportunity. So we have to do as much as we can to actually expose them to that. And I think if we can do that, there's this world of possibility. I mean, there's this group of 18-year-olds that I'll say I play soccer with, but we bring them in, a group of friends of mine, we bring them in from Soweto every Saturday, we play soccer with them. But the only reason we do that is for them to be able to engage with us. They meet people who are traders, people who are investors, etc. They meet people who have got, back office roles, sales roles, etc. But they get to interact with us, which they won't do from Diepkloof. You understand? So what you do, for example, what your business does, you need to spread it out there, get it out there, because only once people get exposed to what opportunity looks like do they start making those connections that can help them get to where they need to be. And the reality, where the world is going, nothing's going to be given to us, guys. We're going to have to go out and fetch it. So that'll be my little nugget there. Yeah.
Good day, Kagiso. Thank you so much for the insightful session. My name is Sakane. I'm an independent management consultant. I just wanted to ask, so as you progressed in your career and the opportunity or luck knocked on your door, how did you overcome imposter syndrome, especially when you found yourself in rooms that you didn't think you'd be in?
Sure. I wish I had that answer. It's that last thing. It's just courage. The reality, if you humble, the second step, if you're humble enough to know that you don't have it all figured out, that's the energy that you need to go and find out and figure it out, right? I think a lot of times where, people get gut punched is because we come into these rooms thinking that we've got it all solved. Here I am. I am the centrum for all your needs, I'm your vitamin from A to Zinc. No. The reality is that you're going to get into these rooms, you're going to think you know everything, you're going to think you know how to solve it, and then you get into the terrain. And when you get into the terrain, you realize that what is the highway that was promised is not even a pathway. You have to run with a machete and cut it off because no one else has been on that road. And for me, that's been what has been most helpful. Approaching it from personally, you approach life with confidence, but you also have to have that introspective voice that keeps you humble, right? And you say, I don't know, right? But I'm the person that's going to figure that out, and have the courage to step into it every day. Every day that you walk in and you still don't know it, you need to show up the next day and the next day. And before you know it, you're laughing at what it was. It's like driving. I remember the first time I tried to drive, I'm like, how does this clutch and this thing? But now we're on our phones thinking about, I've seen ladies who are putting on makeup and doing that and driving. But the first time you're doing it, right, you had no cooking clue on what to do. You had to focus on everything. So I just say, be resilient. Every day, just keep pushing.
Thank you for the insightful presentation, Kagiso. I'm Kodani Tlajwayo. I've been involved in a project in China. I'm working as an engineering expert responsible for localization of equipment from Europe to China, developing suppliers and localizing their scope as well. So when you spoke about the projects that you've pioneered, like Uber as well as the electrical bikes, by the way, one of my projects are electrical cars, so I've been involved in 2 projects. How do you penetrate the market when you are facing a lot of resistance? I mean, you spoke about bringing in electrical bikes and everyone is looking at, but we've got load shedding. How do you keep going until the market understands what you bring into the country or the continent?
Yeah, a lot of the times, you know, there's a book that says called "The Obstacle Is the Way." A lot of times, everybody stops at the same place, right? And that's why I said, as much as you know, look at all of you that are in this room. You are treading into, you know, uncharted territory, and you have to be able to, you know, dig through, push through, to be able to get any new results. You know, if you do the same thing that everyone's doing, you get the same outcomes. Here's the reality. Here's the fun fact. As much as, yes, this was pioneering for Africa, in China, right? You know this very well. There was a company that was running a fleet of 250,000 motorbikes at the same time that, I mustn't use his name again, but Joel Perlman was saying that I'm crazy, right? In the same planet, same world, right? So for me, I look at it, you know, we had to go through steps. Like the first step was what I saw around the world was Teslas. That's what I knew. I knew Teslas and I knew Jaguar E-Paces, Waymo, right? And I said, there's no way we can afford that, right, into Africa. So I had to pivot. And I said, what if there's something else? And because once you pivot, you start getting more data, more information. Every data point, and I'm talking about real data point, is a clue. Because once we did that, we understood the unit economics. Once I understood the unit economics, I became more convinced that is the right thing, because I said, actually, this could be cheaper than what's out there. So that means it's better for riders, better for drivers. Double win for me, right? Then once we got to that point, we said, is there anyone who's actually trying to do this? Then this new world, China, got opened up to us, right? And also Europe, where there are also the people that are trying to do this thing. And what ended up happening is that what we started off with, which was a green ambition of zero carbon, that was just the cherry on top. We actually had a better product, you know, a better offering, a better proposition. So that's how you bring things to scale. You look, almost every business, like even as advanced as rockets, right? How did Elon do it? He said, it's impossible that it can cost this much to send this thing to space. That's where he started. He didn't know the answer, he didn't know the rocket, the technology, anything, right? But from that standpoint, he knew that if I solve for this data point, the demand, the need is already there. So a lot of times that's what you need to actually focus on when you're trying to look at product market fit, is actually what is the main obstacle that people are not trying to solve. Very quickly, there's this analogy I love. I forget the lady's name. Her book is called Quit. I think she wrote Quit. She wrote another book. But the analogy that she talks about, I think she borrowed it, but it's called the monkey on the pedestal. So basically, very quickly, I know Chuku now is looking at me twice. It's like, very quickly, there's the, if I had to ask you today, I need you to get a monkey to stand on a pedestal at Monte Cassino and sing opera. How do you start? The reality, most of us go start shopping for pedestals. Wrong. That's the easy thing. You need to learn, you need to find out how to teach the monkey how to sing opera, right? Until you do that, you can't solve the problem. When we were trying to make folding phones at Samsung, right? I got to Seoul and the guy said, no, folding technology has been here like 4 or 5 years. we're waiting for the battery and the chips to catch up, right? So you start with the hardest problem. And once you're confident you're going to solve for that, I promise you, everything just flows from that. A lot of times people get busy and start with, all sorts of other things before you actually solve the real problem, which is, most of the time in Africa, it's about unit economics. We know how much money people have. And if you can't solve for that, you're probably tackling the problem in the wrong way, for example. Yeah. Cool.
Sorry guys, we'll just take one last question so that we can head out by 2024 on the group photo. And I'd like to ask that if anyone has further questions, that we reserve it for the Q&A after the group photo.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Peta. Maybe let me start there. Peta Mkhunu. I am the founder of a waste management business focusing specifically on recycling in rural areas. Also the founder of a bakery specializing in bespoke celebrations. And the job that actually pays me is that I'm a financial services attorney. I love the emphasis that you've placed on opportunity. As someone who loves starting things and building things, I often like to say I am both absolutely terrified and addicted to failure. And so my question today is, the key word seems to be why. Everywhere we're going, they're saying why. After failure, for you, what gets you up in the morning where you say, okay, yesterday I failed, you wake up, we go again? Yeah.
You answered yourself, it's the why. I honestly can't give a better answer than the why. If you don't know why you're doing something, there's 1,000,001 reasons. Like you said, the terrain, once you're in motion, the terrain is going to send you different directions. But if you don't have that North Star, you're always not going to have the right thrust energy to overcome. Even the previous question, if you don't have that drive, the why, you're not going to solve the hard problem. Everyone else, those smarter people, smarter than us, much more experienced than you, much more this and this and that, they didn't have that resilience to actually keep going and to really push through that obstacle. So for me, it's always about the why. And if you can't make that connection to what you do, failure hits you hard. Looking at your current mutual friend of ours, I remember he came to me and he said, "Hey man, let's take on Spotify and Apple Music." And hey, there I am. I'm like, yes, we're gonna do it. And yeah, that was a big failure, bro. That was a big failure. But for one glorious month, folks, we were #1 above Apple Music and Spotify in South Africa, right? And we were really pushing the launch of this purely local music platform, right? And I remember, like, we would have cried and kissed if we could, like. But what I learned from that experience, I learned about go-to-market, and from there, the following year, we went and delivered the largest Samsung launch, right, outside of Korea, which is insane, right? But it was about, again, taking what you can from the rubble, taking the lessons, and then continuing, because we knew what we wanted to do. The both of us, we loved Apple, worked for Samsung, and we said we're gonna beat those guys. So yeah, keep going. And I like people like yourself. We are generalists. We're the few. Everyone else is specialists. Good luck with throwing the waste and making cakes. Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, Shiko. Thank you.
So we can.